Welcome. My name is Karen Field Bolek, and this is lesson number 15 in my course, A Spiritual Path to True Love. Today I'll be talking about ways to give yourself an emotional clean slate by forgiving others. Educated and spiritual people often tell us that when someone hurts you, it's best to forgive them so that you can move on. Unfortunately, if you've ever been deeply wounded by someone in a love relationship, you know that forgiving them may be hard to do. Sometimes people try, but fail to forgive completely. Sometimes people don't even try because they reason that it would be letting their offender off the hook, thus enabling a bad person to behave badly again by not providing consequences for their actions. That seems logical enough. So we try to find the easiest route to feel better. That will also provide consequences. We try to get even so we can teach a lesson and maybe get the last laugh. Hold a grudge so we can feel superior. Rant and go off on the offender so we can at least let off steam. Wallow in self-pity so we can self-soothe and invite the sympathy of others. Challenge and shame the offender to set them straight and feel like we've won. Wave a banner of self-righteousness to show others how good we are compared to the offender. Or just pretend the insult or injury doesn't really hurt when somewhere deep inside it does. These strategies are normal because they show up instinctively among children, teens, and adults. I'm going to assume that, like just about every other person on the planet, you've tried at least some of these strategies somewhere in your life. I like to get even by moving away from someone and then eventually outpacing them. It's similar to the idea that success is the best revenge. But if you want to keep a love relationship, getting revenge is risky. Getting even can give you an egotistical rush, but if it also leaves you feeling contempt and self-righteousness, those attitudes become baked into your personality, or they pollute all your other relationships too. In a romantic relationship, any serious effort at revenge will probably kill the chances of reviving your love for each other and may escalate into violence. Moreover, in international relations, revenge hardens people's feelings of self-righteousness, contempt, hatred, and bitterness on both sides, bringing the world one step further from world peace and universal compassion. Another issue is that according to the research of Nobel Prize-winning scientist Elisabeth Blackburn and health psychologist Elissa Epel, co-authors of The Telomere Effect, negative, stressful attitudes like these may shorten your health span and even your lifespan. In other words, scientific research and common sense suggests that harboring these attitudes will extend and compound your suffering over time. And for the same reasons, if you decide to hold a permanent grudge to provide consequences, all too often the offender finds a way to shrug it off and look down on you for holding the grudge. Ranting and going off on your perpetrator usually causes them to shut down and stop listening. And the steam you let off in the process can build up again once you realize they didn't hear a word you said. Another dead end. Now, if you really get into playing the victim and wallow in self-pity while seeking a sympathetic audience to boost your morale, you will likely develop an ongoing habit of playing to an audience. You can pout, whine, complain, and cry for dramatic effect, but if you do, your audience will eventually feel drained and used, and probably want to get away. On the other hand, if you go into denial and pretend you're strong and you weren't really hurt by the person who hurt you, you'll increase your own stress level permanently. That is, you'll have to spend energy every day for the rest of your life, working internally to push down and deny your pain. And again, that extra layer of long-term stress to your body-mind can potentially impair your health. People who really love themselves honor their own feelings, listen to them, and take appropriate action or make new decisions based on them, such as redistancing themselves. They might also rethink their own part in creating the problem and change their relationship approach. But they don't lie to themselves about how bad they feel. Further, your denial of how bad you feel following a rejection or insult can make you appear to others to be somewhat phony and shallow. So, if you want to heal your anger while expanding your capacity to love and strengthening your integrity, forgiveness is the winning strategy. The strategy itself, as we've discussed in previous lessons, is to follow the 5 stages of grief as outlined by Dr. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross. Once again, the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. In my experience, forgiveness begins to take shape during stage 4, depression. That's a time when your passion can slowly de-escalate and your ability to accept your loss will appear on the horizon. You feel sad and see no hope of reversing the loss, although you could redouble your efforts and dive back into anger and bargaining to give it another chance. On the other hand, you could give up all hope for this lost cause and move toward acceptance, where new hope actually has a chance to spring up within you. Hope for a better relationship or for a better life without the offending person. Without new hope, I think it's hard to completely forgive the person who hurt you. It may be that the rising up of new hope allows you to forgive your offender and even thank your offender for releasing you so that a better life and possibly a new and better love relationship have chances to unfold. Clean slate forgiveness isn't easy, but it does have benefits. If you think about it, it's relatively easy to love people who make you feel great and never cause you stress. And yet, just like learning any other skill, your capacities for giving and receiving love can only expand after they've been stressed and challenged. Being emotionally wounded is stressful and makes you feel unloved at the time. Forgiving the person who wounded you can be a major challenge. But let's face it, hurting your partner and getting hurt are part of the territory of being in love, right? So, learning to effectively forgive both yourself and others is a critical point of growth for anybody on the spiritual path to true love. Remember that relationship expert and author John Gottman taught us that a successful love relationship isn't one that never sees conflict, but one in which the couple's conflict resolution styles match up with each other. In my view, conflict resolution requires forgiveness. Another benefit of learning to forgive is the opportunity to serve as a positive role model to the people around you, such as children, peers, and fans. That's a leadership skill. Good leaders inspire good behavior in others and at the same time elevate their own status by earning admiration and respect. So, in a love relationship with someone who is pretty evolved, you can inspire each other as you patch up your misunderstandings and mistakes. One reason many of us don't succeed in forgiving others is that we've never learned a practical step-by-step process that works deeply enough to give us the emotional clean slate we desire. If you're like me, you may have learned through experience that saying the words, "I forgive you," doesn't always make you feel magically healed. Similarly, praying and asking God to forgive the person who hurt you may not always have changed how you felt. But I have discovered that deeply understanding the motives of people who've seriously wounded me and working to see the world from their point of view changes my feelings and attitudes, enabling me to grow while letting go of my anger. When I finally get enough understanding of a person who hurt me, I can replay the old offensive event in my mind, not as a good versus evil drama, but as something like a Greek tragedy. I already know what I did and said, and then I see what they did and said. And I see how predictable and even inevitable it was that our encounter would be doomed. It's like watching two basically good but flawed individuals collide at cross purposes. No character is bad or evil. So there's no one and nothing to hate. Once I see that bigger picture, I realize there's virtually nothing left for me to forgive. To really understand the motives of a person who's hurt you, you need to think hard about what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes and to see the situation as they saw it. You can ask the person what they were thinking. Sometimes that helps a lot. Although, frankly, people don't always know their own motives, even if they think they do. They also don't always admit what they do know about their motives and might try to throw a curveball. So, after hearing their explanation, you still have to consult your intuition and consider any other factors that may have motivated their behavior toward you. Here's a tough example from my life. As a young adult, I was assigned by my therapist to confront my father about raping me when I was a child. He first laughed aggressively, sneered and stared, denied it forcefully, called my statements ridiculous and impossible, and then cross-examined me as if to prove it didn't happen. What I saw is that he was desperate, offensive, and just as selfish and twisted as he'd always been behind his social game face. So, without an honest response from him, I've had most of my life to ponder why grown men rape, and especially rape children. And I've come up with some working theories. First is the philosophy that all's fair in love and war, where less evolved men consider rape to be a passionate form of love, and tell themselves that when the girls say no, they mean yes. They may also see females as the enemy to conquer in the war between the sexes. Second is the philosophy that boys will be boys, where less evolved men feel they don't have to act responsibly because they're just boys at heart. They think it's fun and funny. Since being a boy and not a man, they're unable to determine how those on the receiving end of their boyish behavior might feel. Third, like any criminal, most rapists try to commit their rapes when they feel sure they won't get caught. And they may believe that it's only bad if they get caught. Like a tree falling in the forest that nobody is there to hear. They may feel it isn't a crime if nobody witnesses it. As I look back on the day my father raped me, I recall that my mother had moved all the living room furniture and intended to shampoo the carpet later that day. So my dad must have figured any new spills on the carpet could easily be shrugged off, and any sperm evidence would be shampooed away. Also, my mother's predictably timed shopping trip ensured that he would get away with everything before she returned. And he did. Fourth is the desire to impress like-minded buddies. They may share the fantasy that having sex with children makes the man sexier and more powerful because virgin kill gives them more points. Competing with and one-upping their friends when they secretly boast to each other about their wild and crazy guy escapades may be part of their motivation. Fifth is that the smaller the child, the more powerful a grown man feels by comparison. And rapists may have a demon of inadequacy around their feelings of powerlessness. Similarly, less attractive men who find it hard to seduce attractive women may have a demon of inadequacy around their looks. Shorter and smaller men may have a demon of inadequacy around their stature. And men like my father who feel unattractive are relatively short and feel powerless because of childhood power issues, may be all the more attracted to raping children in order to try to subdue their multiple inner demons of inadequacy. Sixth is the model of a dual personality, the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, where the upright citizen personality flips to a dark shadow self that the citizen personality either isn't conscious of, struggles to push out of mind, or scrambles to hide from the world. To satisfy the demands of their strict, upright parents, their strict religious teachings, their Boy Scout code of honor, or maybe all three. They learned as youngsters to condemn their own sexual nature rather than to view it as fundamentally good, but also in need of being channeled appropriately. So, to accommodate their undeniable sexual feelings as they arise, these people develop a sub-personality, which their citizen self of and denies. Seventh is the belief that everybody else is doing it, which in their minds makes it not only okay, but even desirable in order to stay competitive among peers, even if they never admit to peers what they're up to. Eighth is the possibility that someone raped them when they were young, and from their youthful point of view, they assumed rape and other forms of physical abuse were signs of manhood. Ninth is the reality that rape is an act of contempt, and the belief that contemptible individuals deserve to be raped. For example, the rapist may view his victim as a smartass who deserves to be put in his place for getting out of line. Or, even if the victim hasn't challenged the rapist's authority, the rapist may want to pummel and rape the victim just because he has contempt for the victim's physical weakness. 10th is the possibility that the rapist is a sociopath or psychopath with a limited conscience or no conscience at all. As I've mentioned before, people without conscience are either new souls or souls who are stuck at a very early stage in their spiritual evolution. There may be plenty more ideas, but those are 10 that I've come up with so far in my life. It's hard for many people to realize that a smart man like my father, who was fairly successful in his career, a talented speaker, the president of various organizations, and a man with other good qualities as well, could also be a pedophile. We see the same astonishment throughout society when any pillar of a community, whether teachers, coaches, spiritual leaders, and even parents or other family members, are revealed as secret abusers. As a society, if we look at all the possible motivations for rape and other abusive behavior by following our desire to understand rather than judge their behavior, we can all expand our understanding of human nature while becoming more aware of the multiple dimensions of personality within ourselves and others that we know. So now let's look at more common relationship offense, and that is manipulation. If you've ever been manipulated in a love relationship, your first step is to realize it. Until you begin to suspect that you're being manipulated, you're in Kubler-Ross's stage 1, denial. Once you realize you've been manipulated, you're in stage 2, anger. The next thing you may do is confront your manipulator and get into an argument and see if you can get them to realize how they're hurting you so that they'll stop. That's stage 3, bargaining. If your manipulator suddenly hears you and grows and changes from your confrontation, that's great. You can move forward and heal together. But if your manipulator turns your confrontation into a game of wits, you may eventually realize he or she isn't ready to grow spiritually and isn't willing. That will put you into stage 4, depression. Of course, you can choose to loop around again to anger, bargaining, and depression indefinitely, just like an old bickering couple. But if you want to move forward, start considering what might cause people to be manipulative so that you can understand them as basically good, although less evolved people. As you do, your anger will subside and transform into resignation. Moving into stage 5, acceptance, your anger will dissipate if you've developed a deep enough understanding. So, let me quickly suggest a few ideas about why people become manipulators. 2 major paths to manipulating others are imitation and instinct. When a young child sees parents or other adults manipulating each other, or even sees cartoon characters like Bugs Bunny manipulating others, the child usually isn't old enough to be able to evaluate the ethics involved. Children think it's funny and imitate the manipulative role to get a laugh. Imitating others and even instinctively trying to manipulate parents is pervasive among children. Most kids grow out of it or get taught or punished out of it. But whenever a child gets rewarded or encouraged instead of being punished or corrected for it, that child can easily become a confirmed manipulator. Now, you might want to wag your finger and get all moralistic about it, but children tend to do what works. And some kids see their manipulations working for them. When they grow up, these people will just keep playing their games unless, like Bernie Madoff or Paul Manafort, the games suddenly stop working for them. Some manipulators keep playing their games in prison after being caught and prosecuted, whereas others decide to turn over a new leaf, as depicted in the film Catch Me If You Can. Some people actively learn to be manipulators because they grow up under the false assumption that nobody will love them as they really are. And they believe that if they want to have a partner, they need to trick someone into loving them. As adults, these people are mostly insecure about their own worth. They also get a sense of power from manipulating others that they otherwise don't feel in relationships, and that power makes them feel good. Other manipulators are overconfident people. They have plenty of self-esteem, but they lack what I call world esteem. They think of themselves as a very good person stuck in an inferior world, a world full of fools who believe in the myth of true love. Theirs is a different type of insecurity, the insecurity of living on shaky ground in a world full of dummies who sometimes have power over them. The way they attempt to feel secure on the most basic level is by gaining control and manipulating everyone around them. Overconfident manipulators often see love as a game in which they leverage their power to get all the relationship goodies they can while avoiding any real emotional investment. These people don't see themselves as bad, but they will readily make fools of others, both as a joke and as a way to reinforce their self and worldview. By the way, self and worldview is a topic we'll cover in depth in segment 3 of this course, a segment on loving the world and loving life itself. I've also seen people who show characteristics of both the self-doubting and the overconfident types. These people do a lot of game playing in love relationships, alternating between acting self-righteous and dictatorial and being repentant, crying, and self-pitying. Their behavior looks similar to the behavior of alcoholics or abusers who go out of control and later beg for forgiveness, promising to change but never doing so because they don't understand themselves well enough to know how. Finally, even after you understand and accept everyone who's ever hurt you deeply, you might still feel bad at times about all the insults and injuries you suffered in life. For that, you can clean up your negative emotional residue and elevate your thinking through changes of perspective and mystical practices such as prayer and meditation. Authors Blackburn and Epel describe some fairly mainstream techniques to help you switch to a positive, resilient state of being. And they are scientifically shown to help people improve their chances of longevity and increased health. These techniques include meditations and a focus on your sense of purpose in life. In summary, today you've learned that achieving clean slate forgiveness is a critical skill for anyone on the spiritual path to true love. You've also learned how to develop a big picture understanding of each person who seriously wounded you so that you can either heal the relationship or let it go without rancor while healing yourself. In the next lesson, I'll talk about specific meditations and prayers that you can use to eliminate your emotional debris. I'll also offer you a technique to use during a relationship squabble that, in many instances, can help you cut through the muck and gain clarity, making the forgiveness process quicker and easier. I hope you'll join me again next time. Until then, the resources listed below can help you expand on today's lesson. So good luck with it, and goodbye for now.